Ronda Rousey. We got many of her public comments. Well, Joe Rogan has decided to weigh in. He has taken in all of Ronda Rousey's critiques of the UFC. And during his show on Tuesday, he had Dustin Poirier on his show. And they spoke about the criticisms that Ronda Rousey has made specific to fighter pay in the UFC in the Paramount era.
She made some good points. And the most important thing is that she gets the conversation out there. And it puts pressure on the UFC to pay people more. If Netflix can become successful at MMA, if they can become successful at putting cards together and pulling fighters away, like right now they're doing a one-off, right? It's one-off and it's kind of a gimmicky thing.
And listen, this payroll is going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazy.
You got Ronda, Francis, Nate, everybody's getting
crazy money.
The payroll is going to be nuts.
But if anybody's got that kind of money, it's Netflix. Yeah. They throw around a lot of ridiculous money. They make so much money. So they can kind of do that. The question is, are they going to do that more than once? So if they do that more than once, then what happens is it's all about the name of the fighters, just like boxing. So if Netflix can kind of do the boxing thing on Netflix with like big name stars, they can be a major player, and that will elevate everybody's pay scale. So as a lot of people like, oh, Ronda, how could you turn her back on the UFC and talk shit like that? If what she's saying doesn't make any sense, she can't say it, right? So if what she's saying makes sense, then you have to go, she's got a point.
Yeah,
she's got a point.
Look, I love the UFC. Spent most of my professional career there. But I love seeing these other organizations come up and people making money. Like you said, it rises everything. Yeah. It's more places for people to work. It's great. It's only good.
So I had a couple takeaways from this. Number one way is that I found it very rich to say that Joe Rogan, he concluded, if it doesn't make sense, she wouldn't say it. I mean, because Joe Rogan would know firsthand, like, if it doesn't make sense, he would not say something, correct? Like, of all people. Number two, at the age of 58, it feels like Joe Rogan is going through an existential crisis when it comes to who he supported in the last election and what actions they are now playing out, that he seems to be at just a crossroads. And now, after all this time, he's starting to look at the fighter pay scale and realizing, hey, wait a minute, she's making some good points here. So anyway, you got Joe Rogan that is rooting for this Netflix outfit to move forward and not exactly pushing back against Ronda Rousey here, who did not have the nicest things to say about Joe Rogan recently. What'd you say? She was on Bert Kreischer's podcast and just went off on Joe Rogan, and Bert Kreischer is just like frozen there of like, oh man, this is awkward. It's like she's talking bad about my best friend here. But anyway, just getting to that point, it was more so just interesting to hear like Rogan weigh in on this. Like that's a voice that is going to carry a lot of weight with people, and speaking further about, you used to have a lot of big names at the moment that are all kind of focused on this one particular subject. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to lead to any reform or changes, but to have a Ronda Rousey, to even a Joe Rogan weighing in, like, that is the stuff that does gain a lot of attention, like more so than fighters that are, on the outs with the UFC or just not going to get that kind of audience with it. And it has kind of become the marketing of this Netflix card is as much Netflix MMA as it is the anti-UFC card.
Yeah, which for an alternative brand is, I think, exactly what you want, right? AEW, at least like in spirit, at the start it was very much promoting itself as like doing the thing that WWE doesn't do. This is, I think, exactly like, I think Ronda continues to do a really great job, and I think the results of it are seen in a clip like this, where the commentator for the brand, you can argue, other than Dana White, maybe the face most associated with the UFC aside from fighters is Joe Rogan. When Rogan seems to be agreeing here with Ronda Rousey, saying she makes valid points, makes good points, then I think that's quite significant of a story. It kind of puts somebody like Rogan in a unique situation where, like, obviously he is the voice of the UFC, but he also at least seems to like show that he is fighter first. I'm supporting the fighters first. I want the fighters to make more money first and foremost, more so than the company make a lot in making a lot of money. And that would like. I don't know if it necessarily puts him in an uncomfortable situation, but I'm sure it like makes a lot of people who would otherwise defend the UFC at all costs also have to pick a side, and that side might most likely be with the fighters.
And he, very similar to Ronda, I think is loyal to Dana White first. I mean, he said as much that if Dana left the company, he would leave. I think like that is his loyalty right there, and I think it's interesting here that in. Like, I would never expect Joe Rogan to ever say anything negative about Dana, much like Ronda as well. But yet they can both, issue their criticisms of like present day UFC that is somewhat getting painted as like this like Dana adjacent company at the moment. He's involved, but is this the Dana White vision? And frankly, it's not like the pay structure was all that great either when it was when during Ronda's time with the UFC, and the fact that Ronda was negotiating with this management and would have been fighting for the UFC had it not been for the switch from pay-per-view.
The pay-per-view points, yeah. But that doesn't that say something? The fact that like pay-per-view is going away, but they're not compensating the fighters in the same way for that lost revenue? It's at least the like, top fighters like a Ronda.
The top fighters that were all going to be getting pay-per-view points. Like it sounds like it's just a lot of confusion about like how are we going to be compensated? And yeah, it's like Ayman Zahabi was on Ariel's show stating they were asked like, when did you find out you were going to be on the White House card? When the graphic showed up on the broadcast, that's when I found out I was on the White House card. It's
I'm
just
busy,
like,
guys. You never asked me.
The Post Wrestling Cafe is your one-stop shop for all of the coverage that Post Wrestling has to offer. 2 big rewind-aways this month with WWF Insurrection from May of 2002. This UK-only pay-per-view featured the Raw brand going overseas and ending with the infamous plane ride from hell. Then we're going to take a look at AWA's Super Sunday from April of 1983. A new edition of Talk Can Be Yours, plus MCU Later, Book Club, and coverage of UFC 326, TNA Sacrifice, and of course, XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown with all the news of the day. Join now at postwrestlingcafe.com.